how bad and what is the extent of the non-performing loans in the shadow banking industry? Where do we stand right now?
Well, I think that recently one person went bust and probably over 20 billion RMB went bad. So the trust industry alone is like a 10 trillion RMB. I think that industry is in deep trouble. That's where most non-performing assets will come from. And also that among local banks, these so-called city banks, these banks are really beholden to their governments, and they have concentrated portfolios lending to local inefficient projects. So I think that the non-performing assets will probably be in the double-digit range in China. Last time in '98 it was 40%. It's not going to go to 40% this time. So I think the double-digit probably is very likely.
All right, let's say for the sake of argument that there is a credit event and all this bad debt does implode, then what is going to be the impact on the broader Chinese economy? Because as I understand it, it's going to remain restrained or confined within the borders of China.
I think that China is, within China, is mainly about investment. So GDP really does not impact the people that much. If let's say local governments cannot borrow and they cannot continue their projects, the GDP suffers. But I think that for ordinary people, the consequences are limited. This is one point. There's the disconnect between GDP and the well-being of the people. The second is that the impact on international markets could be quite significant, especially on commodities. I've been kind of bearish on industrial commodities for some time, on commodity currencies like Australian dollar and Canadian dollar for some time. I think that will remain the case in 2014.
Andy, help us to compare and contrast small and medium-sized enterprises in China and also in the U.S. With the ones in China, you're saying that, because the preponderance of lending is politically directed and to SOEs, they're starved out, so they're forced to turn to the shadow banking sector, and most of that money ends up in non-productive assets like, let's say, property, even if your company is supposed to be making electronic gadgets or gadgets or whatever. So understand that. That's no good. In the U.S., in contrast, because of stricter lending standards, it's non-bank institutions which are getting into lending to these small and medium-sized companies, which is riskier lending and also more expensive lending, which also does not help to narrow the rich-poor gap in the U.S. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think that SMEs have a disadvantage, and every government talks about helping SMEs. But the reality is that it's very difficult to do because they are small, and the financial sector, the formal financial sector, is not geared up to serve them. So that will remain the case forever.